Manchester United 2, Nottingham Forest 3, perhaps one of the most frustrating games of the season so far for United, and that is saying something because there have been some absolute horror shows. The reason why this one was so frustrating though is because largely I felt like we actually played reasonably well, particularly in the first half, and I thought the tactical setup was actually quite good. But ultimately, some horrendous amateur level individual errors cost Manchester United the points, and it really wasn't very good. Of course, today we are going to break down everything that happened in the game. But before that, if you could quickly subscribe to the channel, I'm being serious by the way, subscribe to the channel, it would be amazing, it would really help. And then we'll get into the video. Now first things first, this started pretty horrendously for Manchester United. We concede a set-piece goal very early on. It's the last thing you want in a football match, particularly at this level. Putting yourself one goal down so early is a big problem, and a lot of people will talk to the set-piece defending again. However, there was a problem before that, and this is the fact that so early on in the game, the opposition right-back can pick the ball up in this area and travel so far with the ball. First of all, evading challenges from Garnacho. Bruno Fernandes is caught wrong-footed. He tries to press forward when he shouldn't. He should contain shape in the middle, so he gets caught out. And then in here, the opposition right-back cannot come through there. It can't happen. That is our box of 4 players. That is our 2 central midfielders, our 2 inside forwards. We're close to each other. Win the tackle. But we don't, and he escapes through. And then eventually, as the move plays on, we see the ball eventually gets worked to the right-hand side. Dalot puts in a tackle. We don't really even bother trying to keep the ball in play, and Nottingham Forest score the corner. Not a great start. Now, to try and be a bit more positive, Manchester United did respond well. Despite the early setback, the temperament of the players was pretty good in the first half of this match, and United were dominating the ball, around 72% possession, which is complete dominance, complete control of a football match, you would think. And again, the way that United looked to do this was by pushing the wing-backs further forward up the pitch, in line with the inside forwards. And of course, Manchester United are once again going to be building possession with that 3-2 shape. Very much a theme of the way that United play at the moment. 3 players across the back with the 3 centre-backs, and then Ugarte and Kobbie Mainoo in the middle. And again, the big question is, can you progress the ball? Can we move the ball forward through the lines? Because Forest in particular, right, they've just scored very early on away at Old Trafford. They don't need to go press incredibly high. They're going to try and play in a fairly compact shape. And at times that shape was a bit of a 4-2-4. A shape United fans will be familiar with. Like I said, the challenge for United is, can you move the ball forward through these areas? At times, the answer was very much no. It was, again, quite stodgy. The centre-backs not being risky enough, not being adventurous enough, audacious enough on the ball. Now, I do understand that, right? Leny Yoro is making his debut. He's going to play the safer option where he can. De Ligt isn't an unbelievable ball player. But Lisandro Martinez, I felt that we could have seen it a bit more between the lines. When he does it, he's amazing. We need to do it a little bit more still. However, there was one little pattern of play which did help us get through, to help us to find the double pivot, and it looked a little bit like this. You see, Forest would play with their front 2, and the idea is that the centre-back can't go straight to the midfielder. What United started to do was push De Ligt a little bit further forward on the ball, ahead of the 2 wider centre-backs. This is not a build-up structure which anyone uses with their centre-backs. Normally, the middle player in this back 3 is deeper than the other 2. But we did something a little bit different, and the reason we were trying to do this is because it forces these 2 in the middle for Forest a little bit deeper, because they don't want to apply pressure to De Ligt. But also at the same time, the wingers for Forest, Hudson-Odoi and Silva, are trying just to steal a yard or 2 to press the wide centre-back, right? Because should this ball go that way, it's their job to jump out and apply pressure. However, because they take this little jump early, it can open up a bit of space in here to play into. And this is what we eventually saw for one of the goals, right? De Ligt moves the ball into this area, Bruno Fernandes gets the ball, and now we can get to the double pivot, and now we can play forward. And like I said, we saw this a few times in the game. This is in the second half. You've got De Ligt on the ball, and he's going to carry it forward, so he is in front of the other 2. This isn't a normal back 3 structure. Seeing the middle centre-back higher, it's not particularly normal. You can see at the moment, though, he can't play to our double pivot in midfield, right? He can't squeeze the ball into the double pivot. And you can see the Nottingham Forest wingers are a little bit higher, trying to steal some yards. And you can see the little bit of space that it just opens up. It's this channel here. It just opens up the potential to play into this area. Now on this occasion we play into Bruno Fernandes, he turns, wins the foul. It's a good sign, and this was in the second half of the match. Of course, in the first half we had already been much more successful. Again, the back 3, this is a more extreme example of it. De Ligt is much further forward than the other 2, particularly higher than Lisandro Martinez. And what we're going to see is that initially, these wingers for the opposition are high. They're trying to steal yards. Should we pass this ball wide to Leny Yoro, Hudson-Odoi at the bottom here wants to go after him. He wants to go and get him. And that means they're almost in these high cheating positions. But currently, we still can't play to a double pivot, because these Forest 2 players are blocking us into that area. However, because of De Ligt's positioning, drawing and changing the momentum of these wide players, you can see Hudson-Odoi here, he shifts his weight, he just gambles that we're going to play the ball, he just shifts that little bit higher, and we're talking a tiny amount higher. But for a player like De Ligt, it just gives him enough space to roll that ball into this area here, which I am blocking. Bruno Fernandes receives the pass, bounces it inside to Ugarte. This is an up and then a back, and then from Ugarte, we are of course eventually going to see the through. The up, back, through method has been complete. Garnacho gets unlucky with his first touch and doesn't finish, but Rasmus Højlund is right there. It's really good play for Manchester United. It's really good ball progression. We just have to do it more regularly. Another way that United tried to progress the ball and manipulate the Forest shape was actually by pushing one of the midfielders further forward. Ugarte would go in as more of a singular pivot, sitting in front of the centre-backs, and Kobbie Mainoo is given that licence to push forward into this area. Now again, the reason you would do this is because you want to try and pin Nottingham Forest back. So if you push a lot of players forward, naturally they start dropping off, right? Because a player might spin in behind, so you just drop a yard. It allows Manchester United to take control of the game. And again, it was effective. We completely dominated the ball in this match. In terms of the actual progression capabilities, when you push Kobbie further forward, it basically gives you an overload in a really key area. We're talking about this little area in here. Forest only have 2 central midfielders. Manchester United have 3 players now in this position. Now, the problem for Forest here is they're overloaded, and that means United can find a spare man. So inevitably, Forest are going to tuck their wingers a little bit deeper to try and help. But now we have more room out wide. And whilst this kind of change didn't necessarily lead to a lot of chances created for United, it did make ball progression even easier, because it kind of drew Forest into these narrow positions, which gave us really easy access out wide. Dalot got the ball a lot in this game, particularly down this left-hand side. We were really able to funnel it forward. In terms of what we were doing on this side of the pitch, it was a lot of close proximity work, trying to get players as close as possible to overload this area of the pitch. Garnacho would go over there, Kobbie would go over there, even Bruno, that's not Bruno, even Bruno would drift into these positions onto the left-hand side. And I think what we're trying to do is overwhelm the opposition in these areas. We've got 5 players here really close together. And eventually, if we just kind of mark it off like this is a 3v3 situation. It almost resembles what we would call a rondo drill, which is a drill that teams will very often do in training. We know that Erik ten Hag used to do this quite a lot with the players, which is why the players have got better here. 3v3s in these sorts of situations, can you beat your players in these areas? And when you've got someone like Kobbie Mainoo, the answer is yes, you absolutely can beat your players. And we get into some really good positions, winning free kicks in good areas. It's good ball progression work. Now, I am very aware of the problem here if I am too positive about this. We lost 3-2 to Nottingham Forest, but I think what I'm trying to point out is the fact that structurally, tactically, we saw progress from Manchester United in this game, which is why, once again, it's so frustrating. We saw better methods of ball progression. We were able to move the ball forward and get into some brilliant positions in the final third. Ultimately, we had double the XG of Nottingham Forest. In terms of actually getting into the final third, again, there's another interesting pattern, and that is the movement of when Lisandro Martinez gets the ball and carries it forward. Initially, the forwards kind of act uninterested, they don't want the ball. And then as he comes further forward, they then dart towards the ball. And what this does is it just drags these Forest defenders towards the ball. But it opens up a lovely space for Dalot to get in behind to. Again, how many times in this game did we see Dalot in a great position down the left-hand side? In terms of, if I want to be a bit more critical, let's try and do it down the other side a bit more. Because Ahmad is one of our best players right now. Been one of our best performers this season. Did not get enough of the ball in this game. He simply did not get the ball regularly enough to really be a massive threat. When he did get the ball, it wasn't his best game, I don't think, of recent weeks, but he was still lively, he was still dangerous, he still always offered something. The problem was the only one we could really find in these positions was Dalot, and again, it just brings up that structural problem of getting a fullback into these positions isn't always the best. But you can see the idea we're looking at here. Højlund and Garnacho initially, they're not really interested in it. They're not really looking at the ball, or they're not doing a lot. They're just kind of standing there. However, as Lisandro Martinez moves further forward, they then dart towards the ball. They take this step towards. The body language changes. And what this does is it draws the Forest defence out. And you can see now, Forest are all higgledy-piggledy at the back, right? You've got a defender deeper than the rest. That means players can get in behind. And we see exactly that. Lisandro Martinez plays the ball in behind, over the top. And Diogo Dalot races in on goal. And again, if we're talking about opportunities, getting into positions, Dalot's here with 3 players into box to aim for. It's good play. Ultimately, for large parts of this game, I actually think that United did a good job. The problem is we were still lacking that final bit of product in the final third, right? That sharpness, that cutting edge to really hurt a team when we get into dangerous areas. We're still lacking that. The patterns of movement aren't as free as they should be. It's going to take time. The big concern I had with United on the ball, and there is a negative here, is when it gets tough, when the going gets tough with 3-1 down, The players resort to old habits. Now, how many times have I said that in the past 18 months? Not just with Ruben Amorim, with Van Nistelrooy, but also with Erik ten Hag. The amount of times we would say, we're playing all right, things go a little bit wrong, we concede a goal, and the players just switch back to rushing it. Rushing it. It's like every pass has to be a killer pass. We have to break down the opposition incredibly quickly. No one gets their foot on the ball and stops it and slows it down. That is what United are really lacking. And in the second half, we failed to really control the tempo of the game. We may have had the ball, and again the possession, but in the second half, it wasn't as smooth. It wasn't like we were running the show and doing things at our own pace. Suddenly it became a little bit hectic. And of course, when you make it hectic, you're opening the game up. You're going to see transitional football. All of that stuff is going to go on. So in the second half, it was poor. And I think, again, Ruben Amorim will learn a lot about his players there. Which ones in the long term actually just don't manage a game well enough in the right moments. That's going to be a problem. But in terms of actually the result, the performance was actually probably good enough to get the result. United probably should have won this football match. Again, we had double their XG, but individual errors at the back. Wow, wow, wow. We've already spoken about the first goal. It's too easy to move the ball forward in that area. But in terms of if we're looking at the other goals, we're not going to look at the clips just because I almost don't want to see them again. But it's just so easy. Morgan Gibbs-White, that shot, it just should never go in. It can't go in. It's an absolute howler from Onana. He's been our best player this season, if you ask me. But it's an absolute howler. And then a third goal, Lisandro Martinez gets beaten way too easily on the dribble, not once but twice. Lenny Yoro probably not quite strong enough at the back post, doesn't get contact with Wood, which is a problem. But he's young, it's okay. But then again, Onana, and I'm looking at Lisandro Martinez in the middle. Do something. Right? Jump. Move. Try and head it. If you're Onana, try and get a hand, like one of them, do something. Take responsibility. And neither of them do. And somehow we concede 3 goals in this football match, despite having 72% possession and actually stifling a large amount of their transitioning threat. Errors cost Manchester United. The performance wasn't perfect anyway, but the errors, my days, you can't do that in the Premier League. You cannot give any opposition in this league 3 goals. It can't happen. If you give someone 3 goals, you are never going to win a football match, or it's certainly highly unlikely. So that's where we are leaving things for today's video. I'm actually taking positives. On the ball, there was a lot of good progressive work. We have improved in that area in just a short amount of time, but individual errors ultimately cost us and ruin all of that work. So it's a bad day for Manchester United, in my opinion anyway. I'm pretty sure you guys will agree. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, but apart from that, we are finished. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.